All right. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm so happy to see so many people joining us today in our Scale with Spreadsheets webinar. My name is Jackie, and I'm a user success here at Sheetgo. And then we have Chad, which he will be presenting this for you. I have enabled a Q&A session, so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to write them on the chat, and we will be more than happy to answer them at the end of this webinar. All right, once again, thank you, and Chad, I'll leave this to you.
Cool, thanks, Jackie. So time's a bit short. We have about 30 minutes, and really, if I was to really nerd out, this can be like a semester-long master's course in how to create processes and spreadsheets. So we're going to keep it somewhat high level. I hope you guys walk away with a few tips on our overall methodology and a few ideas on how to structure your data and start to think through processes, and so you can create your own. I'm going to try to keep my part of the speech to 20 minutes or so, maybe 22, 23 minutes. And like Jackie mentioned, you can ask questions anytime via the chat or the questions application there. We're probably just going to keep the questions to the end, so she'll accumulate questions and we'll do the session at the end. But Jackie, if anything's pertinent, if there's any doubts as I'm going through this, feel free to interrupt with questions as they come along. But excuse me. Otherwise, let's get going. So my name is Chad. I'm a co-founder of Sheetgo. Great thing about my role at Sheetgo is between myself and my team, we've probably talked to like over 1,000 users. And so we're able to help them out, but we're also able to see common challenges that people have in automating processes with spreadsheets. And that's helped us to evolve, to come up with and evolve a methodology of how to think through organizing your data and to create scalable processes with your spreadsheets, which is what we're going to present today. So I'm going to motivate a little bit the spreadsheet, and then we'll get into our methodology and then finally leveraging the other tools within G Suite to create automated processes. So just the way we see the world today is independent of your job function or your industry. You're probably working with a couple different pieces of software. Within a company, you have dozens, and depending on the size of the company, hundreds or even thousands of different types of software. And software can be great for managing a very specific function. However, what happens then is you have data in a lot of places, data that you need to manage your day-to-day business, and you don't have a clear way to work with all this data. So what happens? All of this software has a button to download that data to a spreadsheet. If you're like me and a billion other users worldwide, you prefer working with data in spreadsheets because it's the easiest way for someone that's not a programmer to be able to visualize, analyze, and report their data. Just working with it in a spreadsheet is much, much easier than any other type of software, which is why part of our thesis is the spreadsheet's never going to go away. So let's find a way to scale it. But before we get to that, the problem that we have today in working with spreadsheets is it's a lot of manual work. If you have a process that you have a spreadsheet inserted somewhere there, likely you're copying and pasting data, maybe you're clicking that button to export, maybe you're sending an email, maybe you're bothering Jackie to input data or to send you an email or make another copy of the spreadsheet. But the way it's working today is people spend a good portion of their working hours working in their spreadsheets. But we see in an ideal world, in a better world, you're not spending all your time working in your spreadsheets. The data in your spreadsheet is working for you. So rather than spending 7 hours out of your day messing with your spreadsheet so that you can spend 20 minutes discussing the results, everything you've set everything up automated in the background so that you're not spending so much time in your spreadsheets, but you're making strategic decisions based on what the data in your spreadsheets is telling you. So to get to that ideal world, the methodology that we came up with, it's not original. It's based on the ETL methodology of having program, extract, transform, load. Also, Google has a similar methodology in thinking through how to work with data. But the way we like to present it is collect, prepare, report. And so I'll go through what each one of these means, but when I'm designing a process, I like to start with the report first. So I like to think through what is my output? What's the message I want to tell or I need to tell, or what do I need to analyze? And then I can go backwards and I can see how I'm going to get my data to that final report. So just at a high level, your report has to be something very easy to digest, very graphical, the minimal amount of data that you need to tell this, to relate the story that the data is telling you. So when you're thinking of your report, think of your audience. Is it going to be your colleague? Is it going to be your boss? Is it going to be the C-level at your company, an external investor? Whoever the audience is, what is the data that they need to understand what's happening behind the scenes? At Sheetgo, we have as a rule 30-minute meetings. And so I know when my team, if they show up to a meeting with a spreadsheet with a bunch of data, and I cancel the meeting and I say reschedule when you can present me something. And when they come back with a graphic or a few graphics or a number that we can look at. And myself as a manager, who's very, very busy, within 2-3 minutes, I can understand what's happening in the 1,000 or 100,000 lines of data behind that graphic. And then we can spend the next 25 minutes of the meeting having a strategic discussion on how to act on this data, instead of spending 20 minutes analyzing the data and 5 minutes discussing. So that's what we want to get through with the report. To get the data to the report, you're going to have to make sure that it's organized. And so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail right now, because this is the step we'll go into more detail later. But the thing I will say is that this is the step right now that in most companies and most departments is the most manual step. But it's the step where you can add the most value and save the most time if you're doing things correctly and following our methodology and really structuring your data to work for you. And then finally, collect. We talked about the spreadsheet, but your data source can be various things. But the key for a process to work and to work more than once is to be connected to that source so that the data is updating, right? And so we want to get that data to spreadsheets because we know spreadsheets is the software that we know how to work with. It's for all the reasons I mentioned before. And so how do we get to that data to spreadsheets? Well, in some cases, like in the bottom guy here, the spreadsheet's going to be your input. And this is more common in small companies or for processes that are confined to a single department. If you're working with Google Cloud, your database could be BigQuery. And BigQuery has an interface with Google Sheets. And they're working on there in beta, and where Sheetgo is a beta tester of a new function called Connected Sheets. It's really cool. Essentially, you're going to be able to interact with BigQuery as if it was really just a big spreadsheet. And then otherwise, you might have any other of the million pieces of software. It could be SAP, it could be Salesforce, Hyperion, what have you. But all this data that exports data to a spreadsheet, this is the only part where you're actually going to need your IT department. This is where you're going to, find out what their favorite video games are, buy them donuts or something. But you're going to spend a little bit of time with your IT department. And you're going to tell them what's the report you need to extract, and you're going to get them to use the API to extract that data on the frequency that you need it and put it in the spreadsheet that you need it so that you can handle the rest of the process. So that's the methodology at a high level: collect, prepare, report, and then we're going to get into some tips, and I'll show you where Sheetgo comes in. And so today, if you're doing the prepare part in spreadsheets, I think I mentioned this before, but this is going to be the most time-consuming part, the most manual part, and really the biggest headache for you. So Sheetgo, what we did initially, we wanted to eliminate this manual step, and so we gave you the ability to connect data. And then we've improved that to become a way to automate transfer and create workflows based on that data. So I'm going to show you a few tips using G Suite to work through these 3 steps. So when we're talking about collecting data, and this is specifically when your spreadsheet is your input, what a lot of people like to do, they like to think of the input as if it was a form, and they apply a lot of formatting to it. They'll merge cells. They'll put like 3, 4, 5 headers. They'll put these random blank rows and blank columns to separate rows and columns. Don't do any of that, because when you do that, it's going to make it impossible to work with that data down the line. when you're using a spreadsheet as input, already formatted like a database. So that means header row on top, data below. Make sure your data is standardized. If it's a date column, make sure it's formatted as a date. Make sure you're not typing in there like next Wednesday or after I get my coffee. Put a date in there, standardize your format. And if it's formatted like this, like you see on the screen, it's going to be really, really easy down the line to create formulas and create intelligence and create your reports based on data that's like this. And so also with the collect, especially when you're using a spreadsheet as an input, think through the use case. If there's one person that's inputting data, a spreadsheet's fine. But if you're going to have multiple people inputting data, you can think of it like an accounts payable department where you have 5 different accounts payable people. If each one of them is going to input data in the same spreadsheet, it becomes a real mess if they all have access to said spreadsheet. And so in this case, this is when Google Forms is your friend. Create a form. This is going to help you with your governance, and it's going to put the data in the spreadsheet, and then you can segregate it so only the person that needs that spreadsheet has access to the spreadsheet and the data in it. And then prepare. So on the prepare, like I said, this is the step where it's the most manual at most companies. And this is the step where there's a few solutions out there to help you with that. I'm biased towards Sheetgo, obviously. We're a way to help you automate the transfer of data between spreadsheets. Google Sheets has its native function import range, which works well in select cases. And there's other software out there like Zapier if you're bringing data from various places. But the key here is to automate. And in order to automate, you have to have one spreadsheet, one destination sheet that's going to be constant. So you're not creating multiple copies of this. You're not saving this off as an Excel and emailing to someone and you save it as V2 and you guys have multiple copies of the same sheet. You're creating one sheet essentially as your portal to transfer data from A to B and do all your analysis. This is also where most of your formulas are going to be. We highlighted some formulas here. I'd say key to working with big sets of data, especially in Google Sheets, is the array formula, the query, and the filter. Make friends with these formulas, get to know them. I believe we have blog posts on each one of them. But the beauty of these formulas is as your data set grows, these formulas will continue to do the same analysis without having to edit the formula. And so we need to make sure that in this prepare step that we are not just prepared for what we have today, but we are prepared for what's coming in the future. So that means, today maybe we have 10 rows of data, but we need our spreadsheet to handle 1,000 rows of data. Well, if you're structuring it correctly with your array formulas, your queries, and your filters, it's going to be able to support that. And I'll tell you, Sheetgo itself has the ability to query and filter data. So if I only want to bring a subset from my source to this destination, I can already apply the query and filter before I bring the data. And finally, in the report section, I'd say that spreadsheets can handle probably 70–80% of your reporting. You can create really great graphics, things that are very easy to understand, easy to print off and send as a PDF, easy to create a dashboard to embed in a Google Sites. So spreadsheets for me are great for reporting. The other features in G Suite will also help you. You can link a graph or a table with a Google presentation, with a Google Doc. You can create a script to send it via email. Sheetgo ourselves, we're working on a Gmail add-on, so we can help integrate Sheets with Gmail a little better. And then finally, you have Data Studio to handle it. It's good for two things. It handles larger sets of data, and it's great for embedding in a website or in a portal. And then, we've probably handled 98% of your reporting needs. Every now and then, it might make sense to bring in a BI like a Tableau or a Power BI of the world. But for most of your day-to-day tasks, you can actually do all of the reporting inside of G Suite. And so if we have a little time, I'm just going to walk through some examples, kind of put the theory to practice so you can see what I'm talking about. So this first example, this was it's another software startup, similar revenue model to us. And they needed to report their finances to their investors. Specifically, the investor, they need to see their burn. So how much cash are they spending each week versus income? And also relate that to the runway. So based on the amount of money I have, how long can I continue with this burn rate? So to get to this report, the startup needed a cash flow. Cash flow is pretty simple. It's just a combination of your accounts payable and your accounts receivable. So what came in less what went out is my cash flow at the end of the day. So in this case, their source was their accounts payable and accounts receivable. Accounts receivable, in their case, their payments are from Stripe and PayPal. So they automated with an API the input to their accounts receivable from the source database. The accounts payable, they used a spreadsheet. So they're inputting manually in the spreadsheets their payables. They combine that in the cash flow. And from the cash flow, they report to their investor their burn rate and their runway. And then they wanted to add an extra check to make sure their cash flow is correct. So they're pulling a report from their bank, I believe daily via CSV, which is automated into a spreadsheet, which they're combining with their cash flow. And so now they have this check. If the balance in the cash flow matches the balance in the bank, that means everything's correct and they don't have to do anything. If it's not correct, then they investigate. And then the next thing the investor asked him was, okay, you're reporting how you're doing, but I want to see how you're doing versus how you planned. And so to do that, they had to bring in their budget. So they keep their budget in a separate spreadsheet. I think they close it quarterly or yearly, I don't remember. But their budget's in a separate spreadsheet. They tie this together with their cash flow. And so now they have a plan versus actual. So in this case, they created an export tab in the cash flow, which has the same format as a database, one header row with the data below. And with this export tab on the cash flow, they use that to compare to the budget, which they then tied back to their final investor report. And so now they can not just track their burn rate and the runway, but how they're doing versus plan. And it's pretty simple. So the drawings, we saw it as a 3-step process. Sometimes that doesn't mean that there's 3 spreadsheets or 3 data sources. You can have multiple data sources. In this case, we had 4. You can have one data source that you want to distribute, which I'm going to show you in a second. So the second use case is also pretty common, but this is a project manager. So this is, what are they? They're a marketing agency in Oregon, I believe. More or less 100 employees. Their project team has like 15 people. And their project manager, before he came to us, he centralized everything in a spreadsheet. So all the tasks were in a spreadsheet. He assigned tasks via email. And then his team would report status and progress also via email, which he would then input manually into a spreadsheet. So you can already start to see the problems with this. There's no visibility beyond the project manager of what's in that spreadsheet. So there's no way for him to report up and down. And also it's a very, very manual process and very prone to error. And this guy cannot take a vacation or take a sick day. Otherwise everyone's in the dark. And so what we did with him was we said, okay, let's think through your report. You need to have some visibility to your C-level. They're asking for it. Let's think through your report. You need to report the status of the projects per project and per employee. And so your employees then, they need to report their progress. So we gave each of their employees a spreadsheet where they could report their progress. And this guy, and it made sense for governance reasons, he didn't want everyone to have access to all the projects. So he maintained the same master sheet that he had before, using Sheetgo and filtering on the name of the employee or a unique ID. He created individual spreadsheets for each of his colleagues that have the specific task and the specific project for said colleagues. So colleague A cannot see colleagues B, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now all of his colleagues can report status on the projects assigned to them through the project manager using this distribution with a filter, which we then consolidated for his C team, for himself first to do as project manager, but also to have an easy and transparent report for the C team there at this marketing agency. And so I'm just going to wrap up with some tips and then we'll go through the Q&A. But the high-level takeaways I think that are important here are, let's set ourselves up for success. So this is making sure that we're formatting our data correctly. that we have a single source of truth, and that our flow is following this methodology, and we're segregating use. Only the people that need to have access. The second tip is, let's use this methodology. Think through collect, prepare, report. If you find yourself doing multiple steps of a process in a single place, say in a single spreadsheet, there's probably a good break there. There's probably somewhere you can divide that, and then you could segregate each step of the process using this methodology. And then finally, invest your time in the prepare section, using the intelligent formulas, using these automation solutions to make that part automatic. And so that's it at a like I said, a very high level. I think, Jackie, did we have any questions?
Yes, we actually do. We have a couple of questions here for you, Chad. I guess the first question I'm going to start with is, how do I do if I want people/collaborators to input data, but they need to define the master sheet and see if this master sheet, they don't need access to this particular master sheet? Pretty much kind of what you just mentioned.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think someone anticipated our use case, but yeah, so maybe I should go into detail here. So the project manager, they have a master sheet, right, which has all the projects, all the tasks. They don't need to share access to this. They don't want to share access to this for governance reasons. And so the way to do that, to give them a visualization of only what they need, is to use our filter or query feature. And so the way you do that is, let's take employee A, for example. Let's pretend in the first column of the master sheet, I have the employee name. Using Sheetgo, you create a connection with a filter. That filter, you look for the employee name of spreadsheet A, and then it's gonna transfer only the data that employee A has. And so this is a way to segregate the data based on the recipient, so that there's no confusion around tasks, and no one's lost in the master sheet except for the master ones.
Fantastic. So another question we have here is, what is the difference on having people inputting data directly through Google Sheets versus Google Form? Very good question, actually.
Cool. Yeah, I think it has to do a little bit. So that I think the hard and fast rule is just the number of people inputting data. If it's one or maybe two, maybe three at most, a spreadsheet's great. It's easy to work with. It's easy to input data. You don't have to press submit. But then the more and more people that you start giving access to it, the easier it is to introduce errors. And so at that point, when you start to get multiple people, for sure more than 3 people, it's probably best to have the input via a Google form. And then in any case where it's external facing, like in Sheetgo's case, we do, you can submit your resume via Google form. We obviously wouldn't give them access to the spreadsheet, but for external people, it makes a lot more sense to have a form type input. The other good thing about a form is you can, in a spreadsheet, you can set up data validation rules. So you can only input a date format or a number format, for example, but it's a little bit better and easier to do that via a form.
Great. And just to add one more thing, it's data reliability as well. That's why Google Forms are a good option, because of data reliability.
For sure. Good point.
Great. So another question here, how is Sheetgo different than Smartsheet and Wrike?
So Smartsheet, I know Smartsheet so well. I don't know Wrike that well, but I kind of know what they are. Smartsheet, is another cloud-based spreadsheet. So in some ways, it's a competitor to Google Sheets. However, Smartsheet, and in some ways they collaborate. They're a partner as well. But Smartsheet is very, very focused on the project management, and so they have a lot of built-in features specifically for project management. So Sheetgo, our value proposition is a little bit different. We're focused more on automating processes, whatever they may be, and including where the data source is something external that we want to bring to Sheets. And I believe Reich is in that case is similar to Smartsheet, but I really don't know them that well.
All right. Another question, what is the compatibility with Microsoft?
Oh, cool. So right now, our hard and fast rule is we operate in Google Drive. So if the Microsoft file is saved in Google Drive, then we can connect to it. It's seamless. It's the same way we connect to a Google Sheet. We do have a Microsoft add-in, and it's an alpha right now. We're going to release it pretty soon. But the Microsoft add-in will allow you to connect to Microsoft Excel sheets that don't necessarily have to be in Google Drive. And then finally, a little further down the road in our roadmap, we have Microsoft OneDrive. So we'll be able to connect files that are saved in OneDrive and not just Google Drive.
All right, a very important question. How secure is Sheetgo?
Very secure. No, I think the most important thing for our users is we don't have access to their data. So they can think of it like a peer-to-peer connection. Data goes from spreadsheet A to spreadsheet B. And we've been that way since the beginning. And now we're going through some of these hurdles to meet some of these more specific requirements that big corporates have, like we're doing penetration tests, for example. We're formalizing a lot of our policies so that we can hit those check marks that your IT department is going to worry about. But I think the most important thing that I always tell the people, and the main takeaway with our security, is that we don't have access to your data. It never leaves your Google environment.
Great. All right. Very important question too. How about pricing, and is there any customization?
Yeah, so pricing, so we have a pretty standard SaaS model. So pricing goes anywhere from $9 to $50 per month per user, and that's for individuals. And then when you have larger teams of people, and when we have entire companies that want to purchase license for the company, that's where we can negotiate a bit and get creative with the pricing to scale it down and not be so high per user. And that's when you talk to Jackie. And then, the second question, customization. So yeah, a lot of times users come to us with their challenges. So we end up doing a little bit of customization. It's ad hoc depending on the size of the project and what exactly is needed. But yeah, we are available to do that. And that's also something that you guys would discuss with Jackie.
All right, it seems that we are done with the questions, Chad.
Okay, cool. And we were more or less right on time. So yeah, I'll leave my contact information here to wrap up. If you guys need help with anything, if any questions come up afterwards, feel free to shoot me an email. I know we're producing an ebook, which is going to have more detail and something you guys could put your hands on to get in a little more depth on what I presented above. And so we'll make sure to distribute that to anyone that was on this webinar as soon as it's ready. Yeah, and I think that's it.
Great. I'm so happy to see such a large group here. And if you guys need anything, I'm also available. I'm Jackie at sheetgo.com. And thank you very much for joining us, and let's automate.
All right. Thanks, Jackie, for hosting. And yeah, talk to you guys later.